Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Azeroth Daily for the 22nd of April 2011. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of WoW news and comment. Before I go on, I'd like to say that I'm actually down at the I-42 at the moment, so you're going to get a little bit of echo in this room that I'm in, and you might hear a little bit of background noise. My apologies for that. However, the show must go on. In the headlines today, Blizzard has released some information about the Guild Finder in patch 4.1 and has provided a number of screenshots as well as some information about how the system actually works. They have revealed by posting screenshots that they have not in fact changed the availability screen, which was of great concern to a lot of people. However, they have added a number of different guild interests that weren't in the PTR build before, including questing as well as role-playing. You can check out the full information about how this system actually works by having a look in the description below this video, and also I do have a short video on my channel, although it is a little bit out of date, and that is entitled, of course, the Guild Finder system, so feel free to search for that in the latest WoW content playlist. There has been an update to the number of eligible realms that can actually use the mobile armory guild chat function, and it started off with only 2 in fact being available. Now there's a more significant number. However, they're looking to make the service available over all North American realms over the next few days. Bear in mind there is of course a free trial for this if you are looking to find out exactly what it can do for you, and it's currently only available on iPhone and iPod Touch. The Android version is not out yet. A number of winners have been announced for the Hound Pup Adoption campaign, in which you can win an iPad, and there are some great screenshots available with some rather amusing and, as far as I'm concerned, downright odd locations. Go and check those out by clicking the link in the description below this video. There's been an update to the Blizzard Art Gallery, which features 3 new pieces, and 2 of them are of Garrosh Hellscream, and you also have a third which represents the destruction to, I believe that looks like the Barons, as far as I can tell, so that's definitely worth having a look at. And as always with the Blizzard artwork, I would recommend that you click the link on the image that you want, and then right-click and save as on Download Original, so that you can save a wallpaper-sized version for your desktop. Blizzard has announced that they are opening a number of new positions for quality assurance in the United States, and if you're looking for information on that, you can click on their careers page. All of these positions are based in Irvine, California, and you can find out more information by clicking the link in the description below this video, which should take you to the blue post and the careers page. And with that, it's time for your Daily Blues. Surprisingly, they've actually managed to say something worthwhile in the past week, and I think this has got to be the only day that they have. In this post by Aragold, there is a discussion about the undisputed best random battleground setup, which consists of a interesting amount of debate, and the blue poster Slaucus replies with a fairly vague response, I have to say. However, there are some interesting tips in there if you're looking to sort out your random battleground composition, talking about what has been successful and what is not, but ultimately it boils down to adaptation, and what you keep on offense and defense should reflect what you know and expect your enemy team to try and counter with for the highest possible success rate. Interesting information, although I don't know how valuable that's really going to be. Jinpu asks the question that's been on a lot of our minds, which is, if Blizzard wants the game to move forward, then why do they keep rehashing old content instead of releasing new stuff? Intriguing. And there is a response here from Tekralos that says that it's not actually rehashed. It's the same instance, but the mechanics are all completely new. No one has done these fights before, so it is in fact new content. That was the post that he actually responded to, and says, yeah, that's pretty much it, and we're bringing them up to date with new mechanics, encounters and loot, along with a new storyline. There's been a huge amount of work put into these dungeons, so please don't think for a second that they'll be mirror images of their former versions. Except with Zolomon, they actually are mirror images of their former versions. This is so disingenuous, it really is. Yes, we get it. Zul'Gurub has different content. Yes, most of the bosses are different. However, there are plenty of very similar and sometimes identical mechanics in a lot of the fights, and with Zolomon, most of the fights are pretty much the same. And therein lies the problem. That is what people are complaining about, that and the fact that they're reusing an awful lot of terrain, and people actually like to go into new dungeons for the first time and see bosses that look different, and see terrain and environments that look different, and actually explore. They can't do that with the Zolomon and Zul'Gurub rehashes, because those dungeons have been around for years. This rather depressing post comes from Patreus that says that 4.1 is the end of happiness, and that the little smiling face by the pet that says happy will no longer exist come patch 4.1. That will be the end of happiness. Wow, that really is kind of depressing. And of course, this is referring to the fact that the glyph of Mend Pet has been taken out of the game. And Zahim responds to a post in regards to the glyph becoming one that increases the pet size, saying that that's actually an error in the patch notes. The new glyph decreases the pet size slightly. The glyph of Mend Pet is now glyph of lesser proportion, which decreases the size of the pet slightly. This is a really odd one, honestly, because people don't seem to know why it's actually the case, and by the looks of it, there was actually a screw-up. And another response from Zahim says that the patch note collection process is kind of weird, and sometimes people screw things up and get things mixed up, and a note can come out with the exact opposite meaning as opposed to what it actually should be. And there is now an argument as we go through this as to who's right. Is it MMO Champion or is it Wowhead? And Zahim claims that it is in fact Wowhead, as Wowhead's database has the glyph of lesser proportion in their database, and MMO Champion is actually incorrect on this one. So there you go, folks. Glyph of lesser proportion if you're looking for a slightly smaller pet. For whatever reason, one assumes that that will be a minor glyph, I have to think. And with that, it's time for your daily grind. Now, the question is, guys, are you into a little bit of mystery? Because if you are, you might want to check this questline out. It's a low-level Alliance questline available in Darkshire, just to the east, and you can pick it up from Tobias Mistmantle. It's a 7-part quest called The Legend of Stalvin, and it starts with Tobias Mistmantle receiving a letter from his brother Stalvin, who he hadn't seen in years, but upon arriving, he was told he was dead, and the entire town is evidently trying to cover something up. So, what you have to do is follow this questline through and find out exactly what is going on. Carrying on to go and speak to Clark Daltrey, who will give you some information about Stalvin once you've collected a bundle of shredded letters from the Brightwood Grove. What exactly is going on in this mysterious town? You will find out as you go through the questline, and we'll cover it a little bit more in future episodes. And with that, it's time for your weekly feature, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Postcards from Azeroth. Now, on Monday, we asked you to give us some postcards, some pictures of creatures that you would like to see as a hunter pet within the game, however, are not actually capable of being tamed. So needless to say, we got quite a lot of entries, about 700 or 800, I think, so we sifted through those, found some interesting ones, and we also asked you to provide us with one ability that you'd like your special super fantasy pet to actually have. So we'll kick it off right here. This one comes in from Van Solanka. It says his or her ideal pet would be the Kibupa tree. I have no idea what that is, but looking at this, it appears to be a tree covered in bears, and its ability would summon a large pine tree with many hydral bear cubs. Upon passing beneath, enemies will be pelted by falling bears. That seems a tad impractical, I have to say, and I think the animal cruelty guys might be after you. This one comes in from Angus Ross that says, introducing the fearsome rabbit of Caer Banog, the most foul, cruel, and bad-tempered rodent you ever set eyes on. Its special ability is Vicious Streak, which causes the rabbit to leap onto the neck of the... You can see where this is going, can't you? Onto the neck of the targeted enemy and attack furiously for 6 seconds. If the targeted enemy dies while Vicious Streak is active, all surrounding enemies within 10 yards are feared for 4 seconds and are forced to yell a phrase "run away." Ability has a 2-minute cooldown. You know, somehow that seems oddly familiar. I can't quite put my finger on why. This one comes in from James Cotterill. It says, well, my ideal fantasy pet would be Hogger, who summons an army of gnolls to fight for you, kind of like the Army of the Dead. I think this would be an awesome pet just for the history of Hogger. I don't think Hogger can be tamed by anyone, regardless of how powerful you happen to be. I'm sorry to tell you, he's probably just going to kill you and take your stuff. This one comes in from Amber Strange, who says her ideal pet would be the Worgen bears in Silver Pine Forest that should be tameable by hunters. I mean, they are a bear, at least for now. They don't appear to have any abilities other than being scary, terrifying Worgen bears. This one comes in from James May, who says, for my dream pet, I would like to tame this fine example of goblin smarts. Who else would ever dream of using those leftover fireworks to help keep the Hazali population to a respectable number? Its special ability would be Fourth of Goo. Triggers your pet's brave and unselfish nature to rush in and hopefully explode, preventing that nasty wipe. Also has a 99% chance to shower the raid and raid boss in delightful snotty goo. What? I'm just not even going to touch that one. It's probably got diseases. This one comes in from Eric Holst, who says, personally, I'd like the ability to tame a good old-fashioned noob. Then I could teach you how to play. You can't DPS with a tanking spec, and especially to move out of the fire. Because one thing is for sure, the only ability such a noob has is, in fact, standing in the fire. Yeah, that seems like a rather impractical pet ability, honestly. I would call that suboptimal. This one comes in from Jessica Arcand, who says, my ideal fantasy pet would be Magmor. Who wouldn't want to summon lava parasites and mangle everything in their way? Just don't let him near any spiky type objects. Also, the fact that your pet is completely and totally immobile and has to stand in a pit of lava might limit its usefulness. That's something to consider there. This one comes in from Brian Sinclair, who says, you dare look upon the host of souls? And the special ability is, I shall devour you whole. Yeah, that would work. I'd be fairly happy with that. This one comes in from Keenan Maynard that says, the World of Warcraft's best hunter pet, this War of the Worlds tripod creature, would be able to convert any pesky gnomes into red jelly. This would not only help quell the ever-increasing gnome epidemic, but their scrambled innards would make excellent fertilizer. A fair point, honestly. I'm okay with this going green thing. This one comes in from Shwani Perotti, who says, Dern the Hungerer would be my ideal fantasy pet, and his ability would be to win any staring contest. Well, to be fair, would you ever argue who the winner actually was with Dern the Hungerer? I'm thinking probably not, so he wins by default. This one comes in from John Bazinski, who says, my ideal fantasy pet would be TotalBiscuit. Wait a minute, that's a little bit disturbing. Special ability would be Sodding Hell, stuns the target for 5 seconds with cynicism, and a British accent. Also the ability to set people on fire. Flavor text would be Mind Your Manners. Yes, you know, that's kind of creepy, I'm afraid, in terms of fanboyism. I think that almost draws the line with what the hell are you smoking. And the winner, ladies and gentlemen, has to go to Elliot Felton, who says, kneel before Mecha Chicken, the ultimate pet. Completely indestructible deity of chicken-robot hybrids, the mighty creature demands the respect of all who dare to bask in its mighty presence. Armed with the devastating egg barrage ability, this pet is the nightmare of the Alliance, capable of killing any enemy minion in a single blow, and unleashing havoc in the enemy ranks as they tremble in fright. Also, might I point out that it apparently asexually reproduces, granting its owner an eventual Mecha Chicken army. Don't scare people like that, you can't. But there you go, yes, I think that the giant Mecha Chicken is a reasonable fantasy pet choice, and as such I will award you with the 60-day time card. Get in touch over Facebook to get that sorted out. And with that, it's time for the mailbox. This one comes in from Dream Hunter, who says, I stopped playing WoW a few months ago, but I still keep up to date with news from the game by watching your show and various other YouTube series. One of the issues I have with the game is that all raids and dungeons have a linear fashion. You have to start with this boss and finish with that boss. I was curious as to what your opinion is in having breach points, different entrances that have different mobs and mini-bosses that have class-specific loot. These bosses are tailored so they can be taken down by the specific classes. So, for example, a boss that could be tanked by a warrior and DPS down by a rogue, both of which would be applying stuns and interrupts to avoid major damage, so there is no need for a healer. Or a boss that can be kited and burned down by ranged DPS, or a group of NPCs that can be healed up. Now, these alternative routes can provide assistance to anyone doing the major path, like flipping a switch that causes damage or puts a debuff on the boss they are facing, and these alternate paths weave in and out of the main path throughout the raid. You can choose to take them if you have the classes and are competent enough, or just move through as a whole group through the main path. What are your thoughts on this concept? Well, it's certainly an interesting concept, that's for sure. I'm just not entirely sure how it would actually end up being balanced. I mean, if you think about it, you're talking about classes that would go through a raid, and you'd have to have these really specific class comps for these optional bosses. That kind of makes sense, I guess. Although, what I would prefer to see, and this is probably impossible, but it would be really cool if they managed to pull this off, which is to have a larger raid whereby you split off into separate parties. So for instance, you're saying, right, you want to go and take this boss down. Think about it, say, in a 25-man environment. Well, what about if you had a boss that, say, took about between 15 to 18 people to bring down, and then a smaller group had to go into a different area in order to do a side path that could only be beaten by a very specific class comp? Or hell, go one stage further than that, and this, I have no idea if this is possible within the technology that WoW uses, but have 2 raids where the action of one raid, which is maybe a bunch of people that either you wouldn't bring into a raid because maybe you're overloaded on one particular class type or something like that. Maybe they would go into a separate raid, and what happened in that separate raid will actually affect the other ID. I don't know if that can be done, but it sounds really cool. It's also a way to deal with guilds that have an excess of one particular class without overly homogenizing the classes, so that you end up in a situation where everybody's doing exactly the same thing. I think the linearity thing is certainly a concern, and there are issues of longevity. For instance, if you decide to make a instance non-linear to the point where you can do it in different ways, and there are some bosses that you can only do in specific weeks, then in my opinion you actually expand the appeal of the raid and you lessen the amount of burnout that people would actually have. I would like to see that, as opposed to raids where you have to kill everything in a single run. And it's not just about optional bosses, it's about, yes, you have to kill one of these bosses, but once you kill one, the other one becomes unavailable for that week. That would be kind of neat, although I do have perhaps issues with the way that the loot tables might work, and if you had the same loot table, then people are obviously just going to take the easiest boss every time. So it's a bit of a toss-up, really, as to whether or not you could sort of force people to do the other boss, and what kind of loot table you would have in there to encourage people to get in there, and would it annoy other members of the raid because you've gone to a boss that didn't have what they wanted, blah blah blah. You know how it goes. It's a little bit tricky that way. This one comes in from a man named Squids, and he says, as we all know, to play Cataclysm World of Warcraft, we need to have all the expansions, including the first original game. I couldn't help but realize that Blizzard is taking away parts of a game we paid for. I paid a good amount of money for all my expansions, and I find it wrong that Blizzard is taking away parts of what I paid for, such as the new Zolomon and Zul'Gurub instances coming in patch 4.1, and others in Wrath such as Naxxramas. How I see it is, I ordered a BLT sandwich. While eating it, the cook comes to me, takes the bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes, and then proceeds to put the bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes into my dessert. This is taking away something that I paid for and putting it into something I don't particularly want it in. My solution to this would simply be to keep the old mode so you can still do the dungeons at their original difficulty, and I honestly don't know why Blizzard didn't let us do that in the first place. I just wanted to know what your thoughts on the matter were, and do you feel the same as me? Actually, I kind of do, really. It's not something that I really consider all that much, because I'm always buying the expansions whenever they come out, but it is kind of a valid point, really, that some people might not want to buy or can't buy Cataclysm till a later date. So it does make sense to allow people to do the original versions. And really, considering they already have the ability to switch between normal and hard modes now, why is it not okay to have an original difficulty mode whereby, say, Naxxramas is the old level 60 version? Why is that not okay? Or, for instance, what I'd like to see, actually, is all of the TBC raid dungeons reverted to their old difficulty levels because they got a 30% flat nerf across the board. And while they still won't be as interesting as they used to be because of power creep and the way the talents and things work, they would be significantly more interesting than they are now, which is, in general, complete walkover unless you end up 5-manning them. So yeah, I would love to see that. I think that that's something they could very easily implement, and I would heartily agree they should do that, as well as implementing multiple difficulty levels for pretty much all the dungeons, which would solve so many problems in this game. To the point where Tom Chilton has actually said this and outright said that it would, and they just haven't done anything with it yet, so I'm hoping they decide to do that. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching Azeroth Daily, and in fact, it's me done for the week, so hopefully you guys have a great weekend. I'm currently down at the Insomnia 42. I'll be casting StarCraft 2, and I will also be bringing you some videos as well. I've got a plan to do a WTF